Hello everyone and welcome to another podcast of the French Institute of Estonia, a podcast deep diving into innovation, technology and the relationship between France and Estonia. Today I am welcoming a professor and researcher from one of the big French Institute of Engineering, Serge dos Santos. Serge, thank you for joining us on this rainy day.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Serge, you are currently in Tallinn in order to attend the big event on electronic at the Taltech Baltic Electronic Conference. For those who don't know, Taltech is a university in Tallinn and the big hub for engineering, research and technology in Estonia. And for those who do know, I'm sorry I summarized it so succinctly. Engineering may look like an abstract topic from afar. Could you talk to us a little bit about your research and ease us into the topic?
So thank you, Danae, for this invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here in Tallinn for this nice conference on electronics. And it's always a real pleasure to be here with colleagues that I met since a long time in 2010. And it's a huge collaboration we had with Tallinn University of Technology, Taltech. And which is very interesting is as in Estonia, we have a strong activity in electronics, IT, telecommunication, signal processing, image processing. I always enjoy to attend this conference because we met some students, some PhD students, new research, new activities, and that's very interesting. You're right, in our School of Engineering, INSA-CVL de Loire, we are dealing with generalist engineers in electronic, mechanics, computing, science, and we need to be in the top level of research, and that's why I'm coming here. Concerning my research activities, I am making some research related to ultrasound, instrumentation, signal processing for biomedical application, imaging, and non-destructive testing. And for us, it's very important to be always in touch with new methods, new instrumentation, new sensors, new methods of signal processing.
That's really interesting. So you mentioned that in your research you are dealing with also the medical domain. I guess that you are dealing with a lot of very forward studies in the subject and especially those related to data privacy, which has been a big topic this year in the medical field and specifically in France this last month. Could you talk to us a little bit more about the process to actually protect data?
Yes, that's very important to have such collaboration with data because, as you probably know, in medical imaging, the data are very sensitive and we need to have redundancy of metadata in medical imaging for ultrasonic imaging, MRI imaging, and so on. So it's very important, and you probably know that 40% of the energy which is spent in the world is related to data storage, data transfer, and that's very important to take into account this new information in our society. And all the research that we are conducted in France is related to new kind of data, stochastic data, deterministic data, so with lots of probability, lots of mathematics. And that's very important to have devices, electronic devices, computing science in order to analyze this data. And in industry, the use of data is belonging to the so-called Industry 4.0, 4.0, or Industrie du futur en français. And that's very important to have also some teaching aspects for the students. And that's why we are looking carefully to this innovation. And of course, Estonia and Taltech is very active in this domain.
You mentioned Industry 4.0. Sometimes from a noob point of view, it may be difficult to see how very experimental research and in-depth researching relates to actual society and issues that the everyday people may be facing. So how would you say that experimental research is helping actually right now in society, industries going further and further in their digital transition?
Yeah, the digital transition is something that appears a few years ago, and it is continuously in progress. And of course, all people are very attentive to this revolution, because it is seen as a fourth revolution, explaining the term Industry 4.0. And of course, it's important for people to take into account the human factor, because of course, even if some main processes are controlled with robotic, with imaging devices and analysis of data, it's important to know, and this is the case in the domain of non-destructive testing, it is important to know that at the end, this is a human person that finally take the decision. And that's very important. It's a kind of help of making good decision. And that's very important to take into account these aspects of human factor in the fourth revolution.
Do you have in mind a time where you had to take into account the human factor in what you did and in your collaboration with the industries and society in the project?
Oh, in industrial application, it's always taken into account. In research aspects, since we are making some new methods, we always make some experiments, and the human factor is always here. And of course, this aspect is very important, and I am looking for this exchange between people during conference, like the conference that we attend this week in Tallinn, related to electronic component and cybersecurity and embedding system. And that's very important because we share with colleagues, with researchers, and in fact, the human aspect is also inside this exchange of knowledge.
That's really interesting, because that's something we also talked about in the previous podcast on the topic of neurocinema and human-computer interaction, how humans, and in this case storytelling, remained at the center of the scientific view of the topic. And so that's also something that you are discussing with your colleague at the Baltic Electronic Conference.
Yeah. This is a topic. The link between experimental research, society, and industry is very important, and this link is improved during conference with sharing some ideas, and of course then when we are coming back to our laboratory, we take this experience as a human experience, and we try to make some theoretical improvement of all aspects with PhD students, with master students, and with industrial collaboration. And the objective, of course, is to make some publication, some patent, create some startup, a spin-off company. And the example of Tallinn is for me very important, because when I visited for the first time Tallinn in 2010, probably, I was very impressed by the technological development of this country. And most of the students didn't know this country. And during the last 10 years, there was an increase of attention to Tallinn, to Estonia. And now, for example, in Tallinn, we have 2 students in Erasmus Plus exchange, and probably most of the best students of our institute.
Yeah, that's right. You have lots of exchanges with Tallinn, actually. Could you deep dive a little bit into this?
Oh, it's a long story. First, of course, it started with scientific collaboration, and then I was invited by my institute to take the responsibility of Erasmus exchanges between Loire and in France and Tallinn. And then I met colleagues who agrees to give some lecture in our institute, and after some students who are interested in visiting Tallinn for a semester, for academic semester. And then we started to have some collaboration with students in the Thomas Siebeck department of Taltech. And finally, we decided to make a PhD co-tutel thesis. So Estonian researcher, young researcher, Martin Linz, came in France several times in order to make experiments for developing a new ultrasonic method of characterization of materials for biomedical materials and also for non-destructive application. And he finally succeeded in defending his PhD thesis. He is now full researcher in Taltech. And I was also invited several times as an opponent for PhD thesis, and probably in 1 month I will come back in Tallinn in order to do my job. And what else? Lots of things. And also, finally, I was inside the scientific evaluation of a small company, which is called Elico company, which is a spin-off from Taltech University.
Could you develop what the company doing?
Oh, it was 10 years ago, but I have seen some experiments and some systems during the conference this week, and they are providing some electronic systems like microcomputer and small system electronic systems.
Okay, so one of the things that was important, I believe, regarding the thesis your students made is actually to understand how you could have a patent for the technology. And patents are quite a big subject in innovation in general. And I believe in this case as well. Could you develop a little bit the obstacles or the drawbacks that you can have when trying to have a patent for your technology?
Oh yes, the patent innovation is really important also in France and in Estonia, and in fact the co-tutel thesis was made between two institutes, National Institute of Applied Science and Taltech University, and of course in order to have both PhD diploma, you need to satisfy all requests from the University of Tallinn and from the INSA-CVL Loire. And of course, for Tallinn University, we need 3 impacted papers. So we need to publish the results. And that's difficult to be compatible with patent deposit because, in fact, there are some critical results that could be presented and published, and that critical results which should be inside the patent. So that was very complicated to manage both objectives together, because it's always difficult. And we didn't succeed in maintaining the project of patent after the results because of we need lots of collaboration with some local in France agency for patent, and also in Taltech. And since it was probably the first time, probably we missed the train, I will say, but probably for the next time.
Okay, so yeah, patents is always some kind of a big issue. Could you talk to us a little bit about the difference you noticed between France and Estonia regarding the research you are conducting, but also the general feel in the university and in the research centers?
Oh, yes, that's very interesting because, in fact, when I first collaborated with a researcher from Taltech University, it was it concerned theoretical science, nonlinear mechanics, nonlinear acoustics. And when I came here for the first time, I discovered that there is a huge activity related to experimental research. And that was very interesting because I in my research, in my own research with my colleagues, I always put lots of attention to both aspects, theory and experiment. And I found in Estonia a strong motivation to conduct and to maintain experimental research. And that's very important. Probably one of the main advantage of Estonia research that I know is the practical application, which is always in the mind of researcher. And probably in France, we are well known for theoretical science. And probably you know that our last Nobel Prize on quantum physics, Alain Aspect, is a real experimental demonstration of a fully theoretical results. And that's very important. And I think that Estonia has got these two skills to be experimental oriented and also theoretically oriented in the research and the development of new technologies.
Do you think that it has to do with the fact that you have lots of graduates in Estonia in the ICT field and that are quite rapidly taken into big companies or smaller companies that use them, and not so much researchers or really like theoretical researchers?
Yeah, it's right. And I measure this fact just today, because in fact, most of the presentation was done by new researcher, and most of them are already employed in new companies. And in fact, for my colleagues which are researchers, they are always saying that, oh, it's a pity this young researcher is not in our lab. He find a new job in a company, but that will be an interesting collaboration. But in France, we need to improve this transfer of technology as it is done in Estonia. And the spin-off companies, it's so small, so not enough developed in France. And that's why I am also taking part in France in some association which belongs to the French tech and which promotes innovation, the elaboration of new startup and new spin-off companies.
And I believe you also have in Estonia a program that is trying to get a startup from deep tech and with a scientific core to show up a lot more into the startup ecosystem. So maybe you have things to do together. Okay, so do you think that this is the future, that for France as well, in the near future, researcher will be able to put up a startup from their research and at the same time conduct some kind of PhD or some kind of more in-depth research on what they were studying? Or do you think that we are going into a system that will only favor the entrepreneurial spirit of researchers?
Yes, we need both. In fact, actually, we need both, because we need fundamental research. We need some new ideas, new concepts, new way of understanding our world in order to go ahead in new innovation. So we cannot think about the future without mathematics, physics, and chemistry, biology, and fundamental research. Of course, this research, we need money also. And the money is coming from companies, from all economical aspects of promoting science and results. And we need also to be close to the human, I will say, fashion. And also, there is also another point which comes from these two ways. This is a problem of energy, and this is a problem also of pollution and footprints. And we need also to take care of our environment. And that's something which increases the complexity of the problem. The the new research profession, the new researcher, the future of the researcher will be made with several skills in order to make some new results.
And how does the climate crisis fit into what you are researching?
Oh, concerning the climate crisis, the most important things is energy. That's the main point. And the energy now is connected to data. As I told you previously, 45% of the energy which is spent now is related to data storage, data communication, data transfer. And of course, we need data. We need data inside the industrial environment, but also in the privacy, and that's very important. And probably, since I am a researcher in signal processing, data processing, I am very concerned by this problem of data. We need to use some new methods, new tools in order to reduce the number of data, reduce the time that is needed in order to analyze data, images, video, and that's very important. And I think that our research at INSA-CVL de Loire is completely devoted to the problem of energy, sustainable energy, and all things which are related to sensitive data management and all aspects related to this new tool that spent a lot of energy. So we are working on these aspects, all the researchers.
Well, let's hope that it will be implemented on time. And to end this conversation, I wanted to know if you had any advice for students from Estonia, for example, that are thinking of studying at the INSA-Val de Loire. What would you say to them?
Okay, so INSA-CVL de Loire is one of the best school of engineering in France, I will say. Yes, we are close to Paris. We are very close to Paris, and we are in the country because also Blois and Bourges, because we have two campuses in small cities, which has got around 100,000 people. So it's a small town, and there is no need of cars. All the life of the student life in this town are compatible with energy footprint. So we don't need to use car. Everything can be done by foot. That's very nice. And I think that Tallinn also is very pay attention to the social and footprint. And I have seen also today that most of people are walking outside, and they don't take care about the rain. And that's very interesting. We are living in a nature. We have to accept if it's raining, if it's sun, and everything. So the advice that I would give to Estonian students is they can visit us in Blois or in Bourges, because we have the same way of life. And
it's maybe more of a sizable city than Paris that can be quite overwhelming at first, but exhilarating as well.
Exactly. And of course, the price, because money is also for students, it's very important. The price of all activities are very lower than in most of the other cities in France. And it's a quiet city, and everybody knows each other. So that's very nice.
It's also cities with quite a lot of history.
Exactly. That's also the similarities with Tallinn, because I like the history of Tallinn, and every time I came here, I'm take care about the history, and And for example, during the Beck conference, there was a emeritus professor that wrote a book on Thomas Seebeck, who is a researcher in science, and it's a real nice book related to all the history of discovery of thermoelectric application. And in Blois or in Bourges, we have also a huge history with famous castle, famous history because the king of France was living in Blois during a short time, but he was living. And that could be also some similarities between France and Estonia and between our cities and Tallinn.
So, as a word of conclusion, go study in Blois and read Thomas Seebeck. See you soon in Paris or Tallinn in the next edition of our podcast.